Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far, and welcome to episode 21 of the Breaking Point podcast. Lionman's here again, absolutely do indeed love to see it, certainly for a few minutes at the very least. Interesting week of Call of Duty once again, certainly a lot to dive into as we gear up here really for the Stage 4 Major, many implications at the present time. Big shout out to all of you guys listening on a regular basis, thank you so much honestly for the continued support on Spotify, all the other platforms, it's greatly appreciated. Subscribing to the channel, leaving us a rating, all that good stuff, we do love to see it here at breakingpoint.gg. So let's get into things, lads. I mean, crazy week of COD again. I think, how's it going, Lion? First of all, welcome back to the show. And yeah, I mean, let's crack on.
Yeah, mate, exciting stuff. Big week of COD. Can't wait to talk about it. Not many surprises, but a lot happened. So heading into LAN, this should be good.
EasyMac sitting there with a smirk on his face. He's loving life right now over Atlanta FaZe. I mean, we'll get into that most certainly. But on the other end of the spectrum, right, our Seattle Surge right now, to me, they're frustrating to me because they actually sometimes almost win a map. And then it just falls apart. To me, they're just frustratingly consistent at being poor. The fact that they're 12th by a margin now is just pretty embarrassing. They've officially tied the record for the most series losses in a row at 10. I think technically Rocket have more at 11 because they lost the last 10 series of last year and then the first one of this year. But in one series or one season even, Seattle are now officially tied for the record of the most series losses in a row. And they play OpTic at the start of next week. So they're probably going to break the record. And along those lines, I know we talked last time, Lion, about this whole statistic, right, where FaZe were trying to close the gap in terms of how many series they could win compared to how many maps Seattle have won. They closed the gap this time. And I mean, I don't know what to say about this team anymore. It's just frustrating stuff. It seems to me that a lot of these bottom tier teams, we've been talking that it might have been chalked for a while. Now it's just surely official.
What do you reckon, Austin? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they were kind of done before this week, and now it just pretty much cements it. This Seattle team is so frustrating. The reason why they are able to keep some of these series so close is because they actually have a lot of skill on their team. They have a lot of talent, so they should be like a top 6 team, like talent-wise when you see them on paper. Even with like Classic, who I think is actually just in a major slump right now. His stats are a lot worse than how he actually is. But the thing they lack is no chemistry, no fundamentals, no like. I feel like their skill pushes them so far, and then like in round 5 of a control, they kind of just like make 1 or 2 really bad plays and throw it away, and that's why they get so close to winning, but so far from winning at the same time. So it's just it's rough for them. It's pretty much a lost season over a lost 2 seasons.
Yeah, I feel bad for them because even coming into this week, we knew the team was completely chalked. And now to go, what did they go? 0-6? Oh, 1-7. 1-6. 1-6. And it's like they get close to winning a map really often. They do keep it close. Their slaying's not that bad. Obviously, Classic's not slaying that well. But it's like they can't finish out a series. They can't finish out a map either. And just looking at they're essentially the 3rd worst team this stage. We've got London, who's slightly worse in maps. LAG, that's slightly worse. But in reality, they're the most chalk team in the CDL right now.
And you see it all the time too. Is like you see like they were in a 2v1 on Raid S&D, and instead of like pushing together, like Sam sits on a head glitch and Preston pushes by himself. It's like so fractured, and that's just one play that sticks out. It's just, but like the whole gameplay is always like that. It feels like
they play like they have something to lose every series, and they can't. They like the pressure gets to them to like every map. I don't know. There's nothing much to say about Seattle. We talk about their struggles every week, and it seems like they're never going to get any better. Just going to have to wait until next game to really see them change.
That's my question then, right? Like, what do you do right now if you're Seattle? The season's chalked. You're not making champs. What is the play? Like, there's a couple of points here, really. We've seen some discussion the last few days, some pro players saying that a lot of the people who run a lot of these organizations are just clueless. Like, I don't even know if Seattle have a general manager anymore. They did last season. He's off the scene. I don't know who's making the calls. I don't know who decided to put Classic in. Like, it just seems like a recipe for disaster, to be honest. And then the second question is really like, what actually is the plan, right? Like, do you decide now, okay, the team's chalked. What is the point in just keeping them sitting there? grinding away for the next couple of months with, you know, nothing to play for apart from prize money? Like, yes, there is prize money on the line, but are you thinking about now, like, all right, maybe there are some challengers prospects that we try out, or like, what do you even do for this team? Do you try chucking someone on the bench? Like, what's the idea just to try and rejuvenate this squad? Because maybe next season you're thinking, all right, who do we build around? Do we build around gunlers? So maybe you just completely capitulate the roster when you know it's officially chalked, which isn't for a while, but you know, they're not making champs, are they, Austin?
No, I mean they would have to win because the maximum amount of points you can get in one stage is 125. So this stage is pretty chalked for them to be in winners bracket. So like the best they could do is maybe get like an extra like 40 points and then get 125 for literally going 5-0 and winning out. And even then, they still wouldn't catch up to like the 7 seed. So it's pretty much done for them. So I don't even know if they have a GM or like a president of operations. I don't know who it is, but if I'm them, we're in franchising COD. You can't just think this year. You gotta think long term. So if I'm them, honestly, I can't believe I'm like no one thinks about this, but I would be hitting up like people like TP and Merc and honestly like Parasite and just trying to get knowledge of different areas, who's upcoming and try to just focus on building next year because they've gone consistently with big names the last 2 years. And I don't know if that's the same approach they should take for year 3, since they're 0 for 2 on that. If I'm them, I'm kind of like scouting the amateur scene now and seeing if I could honestly get somebody for stage 5, like some prospects that you already have your eye on for next year and sign them this year because you have the one-on-one contracts, I'm pretty sure still. So then not only can you talent evaluate them this year, but then you have them for next year as well before everyone tries to get them in the current like roster mania at the end of the year.
Yeah. What that reminds me of is if you guys watch Formula One, in Formula One, when a team does bad in a certain year, they completely stop focusing on their current year's car and just start building their next year's car because they know that they can get ahead and have a slight head start over the rest of the competition. And yeah, I agree. I think that's exactly what they should be doing, looking at talent that can resurge this team. Pun intended, not intended. But also, I think it's actually quite exciting to see how they perform on LAN as opposed to online, because we've been online now for 13 months, 14 months. And I think, like, out of all teams, it might be quite surprising to see how different they are in LAN. But they are, I mean, it probably won't make a difference, but we'll have to see, because that could actually be quite exciting if they just come out the gates quite hot and start getting on a run, because what does that do for them in the next year or so? Like, we don't know how they perform on LAN, if that makes a difference.
I agree. I mean, they've got to completely overhaul the way they've tried to build their teams the last couple of seasons. And I think there's another team that should do the same, and that's probably Los Angeles Guerrillas. We can talk about them right now. I mean, LAGU and London are in a similar boat. I mean, as you pointed out, Lion, already, the fact that in that group right now, they're both 0-3. They're both 2-9 map counts. They're getting bodied down there in Group B. Group B is tough, don't get me wrong. A lot of great teams there, but still, both of these teams also in pretty much the same spot as Seattle. They're not going to make champs right here. As we say, like realistically, they've got to come either top 3 twice in a row at the majors. They've got to win one. They've got to hope that the teams that are in 7th and 8th just lose every series for the rest of the season. So it's not going to be great. And I mean, like it's tough to say, right? I'm not really sure what you do with these teams. I think to me, LAG are in a similar spot, right? The series that they lost this week, especially the one against Florida, you could see at times it's like, I don't understand what the goal is with this team. Like when you built this team and when you brought in the fact that you haven't made a serious change, the only serious change you made is getting rid of Vivid and bringing in Chino. Everyone told you that wasn't going to work, at least if you want to be a championship contender. And now you're not going to make champs anyway. It's like, what is the goal with this team? I never saw it from the start. That like the fact of the matter is that you're never going to have the talent to compete with the top squads, no matter how good your teamwork is. Because we talk how good Toronto's teamwork is, right, and how much that helps them against the top teams. They're also incredibly individually talented that people don't really get, right? And LNG, I just don't think have that, like straight up. That's one of the reasons why they lose a lot of these series. So. Like, I just don't understand. If it were me, like, I think you make some good points, like Austin, the fact that I'm probably gonna try and make some moves here for stage 5 to build for next season. To be honest, if I'm actually trying to win, like, isn't that the goal?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, hopefully they are at least scouting some talent to pick up because there's definitely some pieces that you could pick up right now and build around for next season.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
my opinion with LAG and Seattle as well, it's like they pick their rosters based on previous CODs that were somewhat similar. Like LAG is pretty much World War II Envy. Oh, not Envy, EG.
Yeah.
And it's not worked, and it didn't work in BO4 either. And then Seattle's pretty much just rise from World War II as well with like some different pieces. And it's like those two teams, they're not. It's like they got stuck in the past and didn't realize that the skill actually went up in the last 2 or 3 years, and you can't compete with these other rosters. And then they'll just keep recycling similar players at a similar level and not actually go out and scout like a new prospect. And it's hit, like they've shot themselves in the foot in that way because these other teams have picked up those players that actually enhance their ability. But yeah,
There's not too many of those players out there, right? Like if you're looking for a fast aggro SMG player, it's like, there's not too many options, and one of the good options you've let slip by, right? So, yeah, I mean, they only played a couple of matches this week, and it's just the same old at this point, to be honest. I want to talk about LA Thieves, though, because if there's one team that's in a surprising spot, to me, it's Thieves. And you had some interesting points in this line. I'll throw it to you in a second here, because Cap said before they played their series against Paris, there was a video that came out. They were discussing the change, the fact that, okay, TJ's come back in for Huke, and effectively they said that they're confident that this is going to be the roster for the rest of the season. Then they go in to lose to Paris. They then get bodied by FaZe, just completely humiliated. We'll get into that. But the defeat to Paris is like, that's just unacceptable, right? If you want to be a top team, you can't be losing to a team like Paris, especially with the implications for your group. Like, realistically, right now in Group A, they sit there in a tough spot. Let's look at it. Yeah, they're 4th right now. They're 1-2. They still have to play OpTic. So if they lose that, it's probably chalked for winners bracket. So, all things considered, Thieves it's crazy to me. They looked good at a time when they brought in Tej. Then they bring Huke in, they look worse. Then they bring Tej back in, and they look worse again. So, Lion, I don't know, be general manager, be Muddock for a second, and figure this team out for stage 5, because you've got Slasher and Huke sitting there on the bench that maybe haven't played quite in a while, but still, I can't see this team winning champs, and I wonder if they think the same.
Yeah, with this team, it is kind of crazy that they got progressively worse. But if you actually think about it, it's not that surprising. They took a month out without a certain player on their team. And when TJ was on the team, they weren't stunningly good at the when he was first there. They took him out, put Huke in. They were slightly worse. Bring back TJ, and they're actually quite a lot worse. And it's obvious because you can't just bring back a player after a month, expect to be at the same level, and then just get bodied. So, in my opinion, changing the roster again would actually be the worst idea because you're just falling back even more. And like all these other teams, no one else is making a change. What do you expect to happen bringing back Slasher, who didn't play that well at the start of the year? You're not just going to suddenly be good. Maybe LAN helps. Like LAN could help with all these teams, but it's not going to happen. You need to actually solidify like teamwork and work together and actually try and find some gains because it's not going to happen with a change. I don't think, especially with the talent they have, that's not going to change.
So I actually have a good comparison for this, I think. So I'm not that heavy into F1. I've been starting to watch it every race this year. But a good comparison for LA right now and how that org is it's kind of like Red Bull for the past 3 years when they had Albon and Gasly, where they're an extremely high pressure situation where if they don't perform, the cutting block is actually you're just don't perform, you're gone. Right off the bat. So that organization, it's just there's a lot of pressure to succeed. Just not only just because how big they are, but just that's just what that org is. It's pressure to win. Yeah. And honestly, I think that brought out kind of like Austin's a Slasher's mentality for how he plays is he's real iron fist, but he's one of those leaders that's just he knows how he wants to play and he's gonna play that way. And if you don't want to play that way, then we're gonna have to look at other options. And so that combination of the pressure of the org and the pressure from that just didn't work out. So they made moves and they've been trying to figure out the right 4. And it just seems like the pressure from both outside and inside is so much on the team that as you said, this 4 was actually doing really, really well until they brought Huke in. And then it was a month later, they go back to that roster and all of a sudden they're underperforming. It's well, what happened within that month? So what happened within that 1 month that caused that same exact roster to now way underperform what they were doing before? So there's a lot of questions. I don't like how Cap's been getting the brunt of it. It's actually kind of funny. Every time they make a roster change, everyone goes at him. But in reality, I honestly think that that coaching staff is doing a good job. They're trying, and the 4 players on there, yeah, I don't know if they're the most skilled team. They definitely have a lot of like raw talent, and the way they play is very free flowing, and like it can catch a lot of teams off guard. It's just like they're in a slump right now, and like all the external pressure is not helping at all, and it's kind of compounding all of their issues.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think like I agree with Line in a way that you don't want to be too eager to make changes a lot of the time, but then at the same time they brought in Huke for like a week and then ditched him, right? So it's just interesting because maybe they're. I wonder if they're going to realize that okay, maybe making all these rapid fire changes isn't going to create a long-term solution. I mean, then again, we look at Ultra last season, they made a lot of moves. They finally found a roster that kind of worked towards the end, but I don't know. I just don't think this is that for Thieves, and they're just in such a tough spot, man. Because you've got so much talent on the bench. But I agree. Like I think I said in the video the fact that, and as you say, Austin, you bring a guy like Slasher back in, it's like he's going to completely overhaul the dynamic of the team. And there's probably not enough time left in the season to make that work. And the Huke situation as well is a similar one, right? Like they've talked about the fact that if you want to build a team around Huke, you've probably got to build a team around Huke and make him the focal piece and have everyone else work around him. And that's going to take a lot of time to build a roster that's going to work. So I guess they just stick it out, but I wouldn't put it past them to make some sort of change here, right? Because they have a little bit of time left. I doubt they're going to be bringing anyone else onto their lineup, right? So they don't have to worry necessarily about the roster lockup after the stage 4 major when or just before stage 5 when after the start of stage 5 you guys aren't aware everything freezes in terms of rosters, but you can still make substitute changes. So still, I think I just think Thieves are in a tough spot, man. And what is their bracket for this week? Let's just have a look how they finish off the stage. So they play first up against the Minnesota, or they play first up against Minnesota Rocker, and then they play OpTic. So, I mean, if they win both of those, they get winners, I guess. If they lose to Rocker, it's just chalked instantly. And I wouldn't put it past them, to be honest, Austin.
Yeah, I mean, they could still end this stage on like a high note. Like there is some still good points to get at the major, even if they are in losers. It's kind of like the same thing as OpTic last stage, where I said like being in losers was kind of a blessing because they were kind of able to get a bunch of matches under their belt, and then they got the momentum behind them, and now they've kind of carried that into this stage. So even if let's say 100 Thieves, they come in and maybe they take down Minnesota and they regain some momentum, and then they could, even if it's just close versus Chicago, that's a small W. So like you just got to look at the positives and then focus on LAN, and then just try to build off of that. Because as you said right now, like they're probably not going to be making winners unless they beat both Minnesota and Chicago, or if they beat Minnesota and Minnesota loses their next match, which would be against us.
Minnesota, yeah.
So actually, if they just beat Minnesota and we beat Minnesota, then they would actually be the 3rd seed. So there's still life for them. There's still a lot of like positives they can build off of. I don't think like this team is, by any sense of the imagination, like the worst one in the CDL. I definitely just think like they could just tune up a little bit and maybe just get a little bit more of that swagger back that they had before, like kind of this like the zero respect. We're playing our free flowing game, like we're just gonna keep flying at you, because that is what kind of worked. But I think teams kind of figured that out. But I think they just have to start regaining that swagger and like that hyper aggressive play again.
Yeah, it's almost like the game, they were really good to a point, and then that month they took off, everyone else got better. Like especially Florida, Minnesota, like this stage, those two teams are looking a lot better. And I think that's actually a big issue for LA. They're quite close to falling back to 8th seed if they don't win many more matches. Like Florida's only 30 points behind. They look like they're going to have a decent result at this stage is major. And then Rocker as well look even better than LA. And I think this week Rocker probably beat them. So it's looking tough for LA, and I think their best hope is to try and solidify that 6th seed, because if they don't, it could look pretty rough.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you bring up a great point about Florida, and that really brings us into the next series I want to talk about. I really wanted to discuss the whole New York and Dallas stuff before Lion has to leave us, because that was kind of the interesting stuff of the week. But of course, New York, their first series, they played against Florida. There was quite a lot of discussion really around New York, because they had a tough time. They had the whole thing about a team being stuck in Canada. Still somewhat unclear with this whole lacking visa stuff, whether he's going to be able to get to the States for 10 days from when we're recording when the major begins. So that's still up in the air. There's a whole other stuff. If you guys saw about Clayton talking about his internet got sabotaged by some OpTic shooters or whatever, that was strange. You've got Hydra looking somewhat very unwell really from the cam. So there's a lot of things that New York have been struggling with this week. They still come out and get the job done in both series they play. And that is very impressive, right? Because they've obviously been facing some issues. They win another 2 Game 5s, which, I mean, they haven't lost a Game 5 yet with Hydra in the team. That is impressive to say the very least. And up against the Florida Mutineers team, great series. Asim goes 11-4 in both Search and Destroys, awakening at his moments. I mean, as Mutineers tend to. And Mutineers looking so much better, right? I mean, I'll throw it to you, Line, first here. It's just great to see another team that's contending right up at the top, but at the same time New York still managed to get the job done, and against Dallas just a few days later in a series which they probably should have lost, to be honest. Dallas kind of threw that one.
Yeah, I was not that surprised by the 3-2 New York versus Florida. That's about where I expect Florida to be and about where they compare at the moment. But I was extremely surprised to see Dallas nearly win that series. And I think it's a credit to Vivid. He really found himself this week. Last week he had like what, a 0.7, and this week did he have like a 0.95 or something? He was really performing at like the level they need him to, and shots he really performed better this week as well. And so I think it's really exciting to see Dallas starting to find their stride. I think we didn't really expect it to happen, but they're looking a lot better. But yeah, to touch on New York, I think they're slightly, in my opinion, slightly underperforming for where they were last stage. I think that they 3-2, 3-2, 3-1. They haven't really had a clean series this whole stage, and then they're playing Toronto up next, who they actually beat in the last major. So I think I don't know. I'm not sure. I think they'll probably finish top of their group and Florida right behind them, but yeah, they're not looking quite as steady, and I'm not sure how they're going to perform on land with Hydra coming into his first land event.
Yeah, I mean, so like going on New York first, I definitely think they're slumping right now. But like, unlike a lot of the other teams, they're grinding out wins, which sounds weird because they're outslaying by 20. But if you look at it, you shouldn't be winning by like 10 points when you're outslaying by that much. I definitely thought that was just a little bit of like a red flag when they were playing Dallas. Was Dallas realistically should have won both of those hard points, especially that checkmate control. If you go back and watch, New York was outslaying by like what, 20 kills, and if Crim6 backs up instead of pushing the plane on that last P1 going into P2, they keep spawns, and they probably might close out that game because New York obviously could have broke it and it could have gone a million different other ways. But the fact that it was that close while outslaying by 20 kills, it's like they're not at the same level they were, and but it's a huge positive that you're grinding out wins, because at the end of the day, like again, we're only in stage 4. This isn't champs. If you want to be slumping, it's going to be like right now. It's pretty much when you want it. So it's not the end of the world. They're still 3-0. I definitely think they're going to have a tough time. I bet you they lock up the 2 seed for their group. Honestly, I think Toronto's starting to find a little bit more form. So I bet you Toronto wins that matchup. But I'll take, if I'm them, I take the 2 seed and just be happy that we grinded out this stage and made it to the 2 seed for our group.
I agree. It's impressive, really, the fact that like they're slumping and yet they're 3-0. Right? You were going to say something, Line.
Yeah. Sorry, I was on mute. What I was going to say is it's pretty crazy that they've been in winners bracket every stage now. Like they're going to be for this stage, and like they haven't looked. So I mean, they looked really good stage 1, kind of iffy stage 2. Still went 4-1, I think, and then again went 4-1 last stage. It's like they are the best team when they don't look good, still managing to get wins, and like. I think it's also because their slaying ability is one of the best in the league right now as well. But yeah,
I think
anyway,
a lot of that is honestly Asim and Clay too. Like the duo leadership they have is honestly insane. Like one of those guys. Yeah.
Sorry.
Like
it's crazy.
Well, because yeah, they're pretty much picking up. They're like carrying the comms to that team, like the fundamentals and the leadership. Like those two are just absolutely putting in work. If I had to pick someone not from my team to win MVP, it would hands down probably be either Asim or Clay. Like those guys are just invaluable to that team. Well, I don't mean to take away from Hydra because he's been really good on hardpoint, and I don't want to take away from Mac because obviously he's had his like resurgence on the flex, which by the way, that's his natural. We were saying at the beginning of the year, like that's his natural role. Like the SMGs is not what he wants to be, and now we're seeing like he's just improved tenfold. But Clay and Asim are just doing everything for this team. It's honestly pretty crazy.
It's crazy that Clay has like somehow gone back to his peak. Like actually, he's playing like at his best, and the competition's gone up, and he's risen as well. And I wonder what it is. Like I want to pick the mind of that guy for real.
This is like his maybe second best card ever. I don't know, like but behind Advanced Warfare, you could say. Like early
I
Advanced
would
Warfare
say
Clay
so.
was disgusting. I mean, you
Yeah.
could very well say this is like one of his right up there as his best COD like he's ever played, which is incredible to think, man. And on the other side of things, you got Crimsix right in the Dallas Empire. They lose a series that really they should have won. Game 1 should have gone their way. Game 5, they had a 3-0 edge. And this is the thing with the Dallas team, right? You've got a great series from Vivid. You've got a great series from Shotzi once again, as is tradition at this point. He's been absolutely out of control. But then Ilya and Crimsix, statistically, that's your AR duo. That's where pretty much every team, their strength is in their AR duo a lot of the times. Or at least their AR duo isn't what's bringing the team down. Problem is with Dallas right now is that I'm not so confident, Austin, that Krim and Ilya are going to put up crazy numbers, right? And the thing is with Ilya is like, I mean, I was saying in the video today about inconsistencies, but then I was thinking, is it actually inconsistent or is it just consistently a 0.9, right? Because that seems to be what it is. And at that point, I don't know how long you can cut that, right? Because I just look at FaZe and I just see what they're doing, and I'm like, how do you beat FaZe? You have players, every single player on your team can go off and put up great numbers. That's what Toronto have when they beat you guys. Dallas, I just don't quite see it, right? And I just think they're in a tough spot for their group, certainly after losing this one, because they're now sitting down there at 2-2. They still have to play the Florida Mutineers. If they win that, they actually might be all right on some weird tiebreakers, but it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like it was a little bit of a W this week for them because they looked a lot better than week 1 when they were just pretty much horrendous, all around. And then honestly, like they came pretty they should have beat New York, and the fact that they were able to grind out those hard points while being down like 15, 20 kills and making that like being able to put yourself in a winning position on both of those maps is honestly like pretty awesome. And they also beat New York in control, which was like their weakest mode. I'm speaking of Dallas. That's like their weakest mode. So, I mean, honestly, those are small W's to take away from that. So if they can come in this next week and at least perform to an okay level against Florida and make it into winners, because I believe if they win, they'll have the tiebreaker over Florida. So I'm pretty sure they would get in if Toronto beats New York, and then they both finish 4-1, and Florida and Dallas finish 3-2. Dallas would make it over Florida. So there are ways to get around that and just survive to LAN. That's pretty much what they've been doing the last like 2 stages is surviving, because they finished second in stage 1, third in stage 3 or stage 2, and then they've just been surviving the last 2. And if they want to hold on to that 3 seed for the overall standings, they're going to have to at least put in a decent showing this stage or bounce back in a crazy way in stage 5.
Yeah, I don't really have much to touch on them anymore, like right now. I just think that they looked a lot better this week, and I think they'll be low key happy with how they've been improving, because especially that stat with control. Didn't they lose 9 or 10 controls in a row? And that was
Like
across
8
like
maybe?
2 stages.
I think it's like,
Yeah,
it's something bad.
Yeah, them
But
in
that
Seattle
was a
were just
great win
clear
against
cut.
New York.
Like, yeah, them in Seattle are clear cut the worst to control. And I mean, honestly, New York's not much better. They've been struggling. So, but just beating them is just a W in that mode, and being able to put yourself in a position to win both the hard points against New York is definitely a W too.
yeah. But then saying that at the start of the year would be such an L, because they expected to be top 2.
Yeah.
So even then, it's not ideal, was it? But yeah.
Every
Who
match you
could
lose
go?
to Clayster when you're Krim, it's like,
Oh,
that's tough, you know?
You
But
saw it in the post game. Like he was. That's the first time I've ever seen him like that flustered in a while.
good to see the passion though, right? Like he's still there. He still wants to win. Like he wants to bring this team back to the top. And it's great to see. Like I want to see as many possible championship contenders as we can. And I think like I was hoping Dallas would be a team like that this season. Things have gone very strange, but performance like this against New York is nothing to scoff at. Certainly, Lionman, is it time?
yeah, I've got to go. But thanks for having me. I'll see you guys next week. Maybe we'll get a little bit more time next week. But,
Absolutely,
we will.
been a pleasure.
Yeah. And wait, who's playing next week? Let me just see the games.
Oh
Anything
yeah,
exciting that
absolutely.
I need to take
Oh,
a
there's
look
some
at?
bangers I think next week.
Yeah,
Um,
Sunday's gonna be nuts.
Oh
yeah,
yeah, I
there's a
see.
few specific ones. OpTic played twice. OpTic Thieves, Subliners Ultra. I'm
Ooh.
incredibly excited for.
Yeah. All right. All right. Well, pumped to talk about those games and heading into the major as well. So yeah, exciting
Awesome stuff.
times.
Have a good time at
All right.
work.
Catch you guys. See ya.
Okay, cool. So great to have Lionman back on the show once again. Let's move on to the Ultra, right? So Toronto only played one series this week. They're like this Group B is so interesting to me because it's honestly so up in the air right now. And Ultra versus New York, I've been looking forward to for so long. We didn't get to see it, I'm pretty sure. I think maybe Lion said they played them at the last major, but I don't think they did. I think it's been a while since these two teams played each other. Like way back, a while ago at this point. Since they both got good, I don't think we've seen these two teams play. And this is going to be an absolute banger. They come out and just smoked London 3-0, no sweat at all. After their loss to Mutineers, it happens sometimes, right? Top teams, they'll have off series, they'll fall down. But yeah, Toronto are coming out swinging, right? And they're really hitting that form. And I think it may have been what we saw with maybe you guys earlier on, where you lose a series and it kind of gets you back in that headspace like, all right, we're not unbeatable. We've got to really go balls to the wall here. And they're playing some lights out COD, right? Like everyone on their team has just been playing phenomenal. And I mean, they're in a pretty good spot. I mean, they're 2-1. It's not exactly where they would have liked to be, but yeah, if they get the job done this time around, who do they play here? Okay, so they play LAGs. If they win that, they're 3-1. It's job done. Actually, yeah, I guess it is job done at that point. Actually, there's chaos up there at the top of Group B, Austin.
Yeah, they technically could not make it because Florida could win the tiebreaker if they all finish 3-2. So it's a little bit iffy still. But honestly, like right now, Toronto is in like, I think they're in like that back into that scary form. I think it says a lot when Kleenex is probably in the worst form out of the four players. Like Bance put in a 1.46 KD against London, and he was styling on them. And he honestly hasn't slowed down since what was it, the stage 2 when they beat us in the finals.
Stage 2, yeah.
He hasn't slowed down. He's honestly been one of the best like SMGs in the league since then. And Cammy, I honestly thought a big reason why they lost to Florida is because Awakening Skies were honestly winning the battle against Cammy. And sometimes this team's success depends on Cammy winning out some of those aggressive battles to make space for their SMGs. So he had a really off series. And like when we looked at the numbers, I saw that it was like right away it stuck out. And I was kind of like, well, if Cammy kind of plays even at half of what he normally does, like I wish I could have seen like how that series would have went. But since then, Cammy, Insight, I mean, all four of them have been on fire. But it's kind of scary because they're now getting into that form. And honestly, if that Sunday matchup versus New York coming up this next week is honestly going to be able to tell us a lot because New York has been really grinding out these matches, and Toronto has, after their loss, have steamrolled. So, and it's going to tell us like because the major starts 4 days after that, so it's going to be a really good indicator for where these two teams are going into the LAN because New York can either cut off all of their momentum now and kind of have them more into like a frazzled state going into the LAN, or Toronto could continue just bulldozing through this group and take the top spot with a W over LAG and New York, and then head into this LAN feeling themselves and being on feeling like they could win this event.
Yeah, I agree. It's great to see Ultra back to that form. And I just wanted to do a quick segue into a topic I saw discussed on Reddit at one time. People were saying, build a team that can beat FaZe. It's tough to do. And one of the comments that I thought was pretty funny was just Insight, Cammy, Clinics, and Bance, right? Because, of course, the Ultra guys did manage to take you guys down. But I don't know if there is an easy team of four that you could put together, Austin, that actually could beat FaZe right now. It's just tough to say, right? I mean, we'll talk about FaZe here in a second, but like, is there a team that would stand out? Like, I guess you can pick any four players that aren't on FaZe and build a roster real quick. That isn't Ultra because maybe they've got closest, but also New York, right? They've beaten you a couple of times. They just couldn't win the controls in the grand final. So it's do you make a mishmash of some of the greatest talents, or do you say, okay, Clayson knows what he's doing over there at New York and give that a go? Because some of these top teams, they're building their squads very intelligently, and you never know how the chemistry is going to go if you put some absolute superstars together. We've kind of seen that with the Huke stuff. I think some of the lower tier teams can probably learn a lot from some of what these top tier squads are doing.
Honestly, like in best of fives, like I feel like Toronto, New York, Chicago, they all could beat us on a day where they're gained a lot of momentum and they're playing us on a hot day. The real challenge is best of nines because you need such a deep map pool, which is why, honestly, when Toronto took us down, is because their map pool matched ours in size. So it's something very hard to do because you need to be good at 4 different S&Ds. You need to be good at all the controls. You need to be good at 3 hard points, which is kind of like the problem that New York ran into. Is they had APOC and Garrison, but when we were able to take away one of those two, like what's the next? Is your third hard point? Is your fourth hard point? Is your third S&D? Is your weakest control? Like how does that stack up against the other teams? Because that's the real make or break for in this league, pretty much in the grand finals. When you're in a best of 5, honestly, like I love Toronto's composition right now. I love how they're playing. I love New York. There's definitely a bunch of like matching you could do. Like I think Awakening is one of the best flexes in the league. You could do like ASIM, Clay, Awakening, and then probably like I don't know. You could take like yeah. I mean, you could literally do anything. Like there's any like mix and match out of like the top 5-6 teams that you could make a winning contender off of. So it's kind of tough. It's just finding the right group that communicates perfectly and has the ability to grow their map pool. So it's tough to like you can pretty much do that with anybody for a best of 5 though. So
Yeah,
it
I
is
think
tough.
that's fair. Yeah, I agree. I mean, map pool's something that's maybe not talked about as much as it should be. And I thought it was kind of funny with you guys this week. We'll talk about how you guys did this week, because it wasn't a bad week, to be fair. I mean, 6-0, didn't lose a map, not bad at all. But kind of funny, really, because it was somewhat clear that you were still putting in sub maps at least to try and get some reps on some different maps to build the map pool a little bit further. I think it's just kind of funny, Austin, the fact that you just win the series so quick. You don't even have a chance to practice on some of these maps. You're just bowling people over, and then some of these map 4, map 5s that maybe you wanted to get some reps in on. Just don't allow yourself to do so. But understandably so. I mean, 12-1 now in that group. I'm pretty sure Ultra set the record last stage of 15-1 in map count in their group. You guys are looking to do a similar thing. Yeah, I mean, clearly still testing out some maps. I just thought like the Seattle series was interesting. The LA Thieves series was just a bloodbath, to be honest. Like the Search and Destroy, you're just running around like taking the mick, like just destroying everyone, and then Simp just go like, this is the thing with Simp, I think, like he's just so good. And it just goes under the radar to me. I think people have been gassing up Easy for good reason. They've been gassing RSTs for good reason. Celium is maybe still somewhat underrated. But Simp, to me, like, it just hasn't really been talked about too much lately. And understandably so. But then he just pops off like this, and you see everything that you'd want to see in a perfect COD player. Like, the gun skill, the awareness, the movement, the playing his life when he needs to, understanding of spawns and locations, communicating with the team, winning championships. Tough to praise these guys too much. I don't want to gas you up too much, Austin, but it's certainly a good week.
Yeah, I mean the first series was just a little bit sloppy, just because the guys just wanted to like challenge everything. Like you kind of saw it in that raid S&D. Just the difference between that one and the one we played at the end of the week was just like one was like really fundamentally correct, and the other one was just like we just want to take gunfights constantly. So it's different styles, I guess. But I mean, yeah, it was a good week for us. Definitely like this business as usual kind of. It was a little bit of a rough week on the like practice wise, so it was nice to see like the matches went so smoothly. So I'm just excited to go into the next week and just play Minnesota, because we haven't played them once yet this year, and then go into LAN because I want to go into that one definitely on the right foot for the guys. So that will be fun. On the part on Chris on Simp, yeah, I mean honestly, he is probably the best Call of Duty player. He's up there with like Simp, like Prime Scump, Prime Formal, or like best Call of Duty players we've ever seen. A lot of people don't gas him up because he's this walking 1.2, and it's just like you're so numb to the fact of that when you see it, you're like, oh okay. But a lot of his gameplay is he just has so many different gears. Like whether you see like the passiveness that you saw in that one clip where he got like 6 in a row on raid control in our last series, where it's just like instead of just most people would have just flew at those two
would
guys.
Would have flew out the window, right? Yeah, they'd just come out of bottom red right there.
And just flew at him and tried to get that 2-piece and just get traded out and then call it the third guy. But like you see like every movement that he does, this is why I love watching him so much, is every movement he does has a purpose. Like he knows if I step here, these are the angles I can be seen. These are the fights that I would be able to take. Like no one catches him like off guard. It's like crazy the way his mind works for Call of Duty. He has such a high IQ. And like a lot of people think he's just like a cracked out sub, but honestly, he's like one of the most passive, like methodical ones. But when he needs to turn up the pressure, he'll slide right in right away. So like a lot of people were putting him on like the
It's
back
scary,
burner.
man.
Yeah, a lot of people were putting him on the back burner because Tyler was just winning every challenge, and Alec and MC were really heating up. So all those like freebie kills, I guess you could say, just like weren't going his way. So he was doing like a 1.15, getting all the hard kills, and like it was kind of funny seeing people like I don't know. It was just funny that when he pops off like that, people are just like, holy cow, that's his ceiling right there.
That's the thing, like when you've got Simp and then you've got a Beezy, right? It's just like, what do we do here? Not only have you got one of the, as you say, like more methodical subs, but then you've got a Beezy to be the first man. It's just tough to say. I mean, this is the thing, like, it's what I was saying about Dallas. Like, I still think they can be a great, solid team, but not necessarily all the pieces are there right now compared to FaZe that just have everything together. And of course, one thing I also wanted to talk about here was going back to the whole coin flip discussion. I did think this was quite funny because the start of the season, there was a lot of talk about coin flips. This series went this way. It's just, there's no skill gap in this game. It's all random. We hear it talked about every single year. There's no skill gap this, there's no skill gap that. This reduces skill gap, whatever. I do always find it very satisfying, Austin, when one team comes along and just says, like, that's not the case. We're just going to body everyone and we're going to do it on a consistent basis. And that's what you guys are doing right now. And it's great to see because I think a lot of the teams that maybe have that mindset at times. I think that some players have a mindset of, oh yeah, we just need to turn up on the day. You see players always talk about it. They lose a series and they're like, oh yeah, it just wasn't our day. We just didn't come out hot or whatever. It's like, what does that mean, right? Like maybe just play better. I don't know. Like, what do you want me to say at that point? But I just see a lot of these things that tend to come up with them and the players, it just wasn't our day or whatever that means. Like, and then at the same time, you've got players that are just completely bossing the league. And if I was like a player on one of these lower tier squads, or if I'm an amateur player, I think Parasite maybe said it on the flank actually, the fact that you're looking at FaZe and you're like inspired, right? Because they're showing that this coin flick stuff is BS. They can just dominate the league consistently. And if you want to beat them, you've got to seriously revolutionize not only your own individual performance and how much time you're putting in, but the way your team is structured. Because you've got a massive coaching staff, like the mindset is right, the team chemistry is there. I think a lot of teams can learn a lot from how you guys are putting together your team, and it's not luck.
Yeah, I mean, I hated the coin flip term because like if you look at the odds, so let's say New York plays London tomorrow. Like the odds would probably be like what 65-35 in favor of New York. Like there are 35% of the times that London would win that series. It's not a coin flip. It just happened to land on that odds.
Yeah.
And like the reason why I hate that so much is like if your system is that influenced by you not being like 100%, then honestly like maybe that's not the right system because like you should be able to like the perfect Call of Duty to build like the perfect system. You should be able to like grind out matches that when you're not 100%, you're still able to compete and win matches, which is like one of the most difficult things to do. But like that's something like we have been striving for literally what now 18 months that we've been part of a team. So like that is the ultimate goal. So like when teams say we just weren't hot today, it's like you're just dismissing all of your mistakes and saying it was because you weren't. I don't know. It's so weird, but.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it truly is. You just face the red hot team, but sometimes like you clear cut made mistakes on the map, and then it's like that's just the easy thing to say at the end of the day. So it's kind of weird, but I mean, I think a lot of these teams, obviously, like franchising is very young. You have a lot of new owners in the league, so like management, coaching staffs are not built out, which is going to be something very interesting to see in the next 1 to 2 years. Me, Joey, and a couple guys, Sam Phoenix. I talked to a lot of people about this. Coaching staffs are really. I feel like fans have a really strong misconception of what they do day to day. I feel like it's really weird. I saw somebody say it on Reddit. It's like some people like Joey and Cap get flamed, but then when other teams when they do bad, like I don't like. Other teams that just don't get flamed. I'm not going to name names, but like you don't see their coaches get thrown under the bus. So it's weird how like fans kind of have like a misconception of what goes on behind the scenes. I think like having 2 coaches and an analyst are going to be like the standard moving forward. We have been practicing now for since November, so that's 6-7 months. I always felt like when you have one coach, like the job of the coach is not really to teach you how to play fundamentally correct Call of Duty all the time. Like, you're gonna have X's and O coaches, and you're gonna have more mental coaches, which is something we like. You need 2 sides of a coin. So like Crowder is very like mental. He's teaching all the guys like how to mentally be strong, how to improve like comms, but he's also doing like the X's and O's. Whereas RJ is like really X's and O's. Like I see we just did this wrong. This is like he tries to solve that. So like I always feel bad when there's like one coach, because not only has that coach been doing everything for the team at like every responsibility, but they also are the one voice that team has heard for 7 months, 7 days a week, 2 practices. Is constantly just that one coach's voice, which is something people don't really truly appreciate until they see it. When you have the 2 coaches, so you hear 2 different voices, so it's like one practice you'll hear one voice, and the next practice you'll hear the other. It's like a change of pace, so it's not like one person is constantly like berating you. So it's just a difference of opinion, and you can have different conversations. So having one analyst do all like the data work, and then having the 2 coaches bounce off of each other, I think that's gonna be like the future. And then teams that want to build it out even more, you can have like just coach specific modes like S&D analyst. So I think in the future you're gonna start seeing, you know, general managers that aren't only scouting player talent but also coach talent, and then be able to manage the core coaching staff, which is something Chris Crowder does so well, is manage not only the 4 players but also the 4 coaches, and so that all 8 work in unison and as a unit. So I think you're going to see a lot more of that in the future, and I think that's one of the reasons why, obviously we don't play the game, we don't win the game, so the players do that, but the work that Chris and RJ do every day to help them grind out games and improve communication and be like open with each other. So when there is an issue, it's not pent up. You're not building it up in anger inside and then bursting one day. So that's like the real mental game. I always said like any game that has, when the strategy goes down, so like we're not obviously not as strategic as Valorant as the mental game goes up, because if you're mentally weak and you're cracking even before the series starts, you lost. Like it's gonna take a lot for you to rebound. So being mentally strong and having good gun skill, that it's just the 2 pillars of the game. So it's definitely going to be more of a importance moving forward in the next couple of years.
Wow, yeah, there's so much to dive into there. I mean, what you said about some coaches having an easier time than others is certainly bang on. Like, I think it depends on who tends to be more public facing in a way. Like, Joey Nubsy always just gets berated, so does Cap. And, you look at LAG and those guys like Bevels and Ricky, they don't really catch any heat because don't really speak too much to the public. I mean, Parisian Theory hasn't really got too much heat. And then you've got the OpTic side of things with Sender getting all the heat, right? And there's some interesting things to say about that. I mean, first of all, it also works the other way around, right? The fact that Crowder, I think he does get credit, but it's like, there's another thing with FaZe as well, is the fact that I guess clearly the players are very coachable, right? There's not too many teams, I don't think, that a lot of players have big egos, right? That is how it is. If you're bringing in someone that maybe you're not too familiar with in terms of coaching talent or whatever, then there's going to be some pros certainly that don't value that opinion. And I think that might be part of the reason why not only FaZe have done so well, but also why OpTic don't decide to get another coach. That's always the big thing to me, because, okay, Paris, they've got one coach, they've got no money. That's understandable. But and Seattle in a similar boat. OpTic, if they wanted to, could have got, they could have got Tupac, they could have got another analyst like the way the FaZe guys have got it going. And as you say, you've just got Sender, the one voice in their ear constantly. And I think that Hex has talked about it. I'm pretty sure OpTic Hex said one time that he asked the OpTic guys if they wanted like another voice, another coach, or something like that. I mean, Karma actually said that he would be like, if he, he's happy to be an analyst for them or do some sort of coaching stuff they want him to. But clearly they haven't gone down that route or asked him to or whatever. And it does make me wonder like whether those guys are, pushing off on the idea of actually having secondary coaches in the team. Because as you say, I feel like in a few years' time, it's going to be the norm to kind of do what you guys are doing at FaZe right now. So I think that may be something that's holding OpTic back in a way, because as you say, the fact that like the mental game is so important, right? It's a couple of times now that OpTic have got into a series against you guys, and it felt like they lost from the starting gun. And that's probably something that a greater team around the players could maybe help alleviate. So, I don't know if you had any closing thoughts on that point.
Yeah, so like that's why I always feel bad for like Troy, for like JCap, even though no JCap has an analyst, so like, but like the people that have like all the responsibilities. So like Troy, for instance, not only is he doing all the scrims every day, so that's literally like 2 to 7, which I know doesn't sound anything crazy, but then he also has to do all the scouting. He has to do all the prep work for matches. He has to do schedule all the scrimmages. He has to do all the S&D practice, all the S&D stratting. He has to deal with any of the player issues that they have within each other. He has to be a mediator. He has to constantly look to what to improve. He has to also put in all the data from all the matches, all the data from anyone else's matches. So it's like everything that he has on his plate, like, god damn, like I don't want that job. Like that sounds horrible. And this in his role, if you win, it's like you're not even there, and if you lose, it's like all your fault. So I always felt like really bad for him. Obviously, I think he's a really good coach. I think it's silly to think that you wouldn't get better if you have more help around you, because it would just take more. The way I look at analysts is like, I'm not there to coach. I'm there to alleviate pressure off of like Chris and RJ for doing the data. They don't have to do the data, so they can focus on coaching. They can focus on improving the mental. They can focus on that. And then Tupac's there. He focuses on the S&D. He focuses on the scouting. He focuses on that. So it allows each person to actually do their job instead of doing 97 other things. Like I would rather them do their roles 110% than being stretched out so many different ways that they aren't doing that 110%. You know what I mean? So I think that's the future. And I think that's like right now you kind of got like skeleton crews running certain organizations. And I think in the future, just when probably honestly, when some of these players retire, because a lot of these players, like Looney, for instance, I think is a great COD mine. I think when you start seeing more COD people retire, and you'll start seeing a lot more of these organizations build out their management, build out their coaching staff, build out scouting departments for players and coaches in the future and stuff like that. I think you just see that it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is another piece of it, right? The fact that there isn't too many competent people to choose from, I think, has been the issue in such a nascent space, you could say, to use what is, I guess, a business term. Let's talk then about some of the matches for this week. We did discuss them briefly earlier when Lionman was here, but there's so many bangers actually. Like last week, I think there was a few good series. Don't get me wrong, not too many upset. There was a few ones that were interesting. Some game fives when we needed an interesting series, it did deliver. But I mean, this week there's a load of bangers, loads of like really interesting implications. OpTic, of course, plays Surge. The final match they play is against Thieves. I mean, New York versus Ravens is actually quite interesting to me, just because the last time they played, I'm pretty sure London beat them in a game 5. I think that was the only series that New York lost last stage. So different team now that London have, but nonetheless, Thieves versus Rocket, massive for the seeding up in Group A. That's on Friday. On Saturday, you've got Empire Mutineers. That's massive as well. And then Sunday, you finish off with a few more bangers as well, Austin. So, I mean, what ones are you keeping your eyes on this week?
I mean, honestly, there are so many good ones this week between Dallas and Florida on Saturday. Kind of excluding our match, because I think our match is going to be amazing. Not only because we've never faced Minnesota, but they stylistically kind of match up against us. Dallas and Florida, huge implications for seeding this event. Chicago, LA, obviously that has implications for momentum going into the LAN. New York and Toronto, that's probably going to be the battle for the 1 seed. Even LA and Minnesota, I think that's the 6-7 seeds for the overall standings. So even that matchup's huge. And honestly, even the Toronto and London, or the New York and London. New York is, as I said, they've been grinding out these matches, but London's strengths are respawns. And I feel like if New York drops one of the hard points to them, and the control, honestly, I'm not sold on New York's control game. So it could be an interesting like map 5. I mean, obviously, I'd favor New York in the S&D. So even that one's a interesting matchup to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just so much good stuff here, and just looking at the standings, right, it's actually outrageous how much of a lead you guys have right now. So you're leading by 110 points. Actually, this is crazy stat just to think about. FaZe are leading by 110 points, right? So you get 380 CDL points. Next best team is New York with 270. You take another 110 points off, you get all the way down to 7th. So the difference between first and second is as big as the difference between second and 7th, which is well, a testament. 26 and 4, not bad at all. Just to finish off the episode, thought we would do a viewer question, all that good stuff. Coming in from IOU Turtle, thought this is really interesting. Also shout out to great stat stuff over on his Twitter account as well. Does phenomenal work. So this is kind of double-edged in a way. The question goes as follows. If there will be expansion next year, how do you create your roster? Vets, rookies, or a mixture of both? And build a roster of this year's dropped pros. So I think that's interesting. Like, first, maybe let's build the roster, the best possible roster of all the players on the bench. The ones that have been picked up, like Vivid, I don't think necessarily count anymore. I'm going to bring him up here just so maybe I can give you some time to think, Austin, on like what roster I would build, because I mean, wow, okay, hang on a second. I'm spoiled for choice right here. Wow, okay, yeah, there's a lot of options. I think that, like, if you don't go with Huke, something's probably wrong. I think that's probably a no-brainer. Vivid's obviously moved on to the Dallas Empire right now. Wow, Vivid's still listed as a substitute here on he's still listed as a sub at LAG on Cocapedia. That should not be the case anymore. But okay, we got sucked on the Mutineers. Like, I'd love to see. I wonder. Yeah, I don't think it would work though. Like, I kind of want to put like who needs a partner who's a hyper aggressive aggro SMG. I wonder who makes best sense in that role, because I feel like obviously like DiamondCon isn't that guy, but I feel like I'd like to put DiamondCon on the team as well. I think he was good on the Subliners, maybe somewhat underrated. Like, I'd love to put Zed there as well, but I just don't know if Zed and Huke is the play.
Honestly, I would go the opposite. Because Huke, the reason why Huke got like some flack this year is because he's so hyper aggressive. Whereas honestly, when you look at New York, I always think Hydra kind of just goes rogue. Like, and the other three have such good comms and like fundamentals that they kind of like lock down like the other objectives on the map. I'm not just talking about the hill. I'm talking about like spawns and everything else, and making sure the other team is spawning where you want them to. Where like Huke needs to be in that role where Hydra's in right now. So like I don't hate like having like Huke, Diamond Con, maybe even like a general as your main AR, or like methods. Just as long as your other three are fundamentally correct. Like that's why I like Zed, is he's like a contrast to Huke. So if you get punished for Huke's aggression, at least you have Zed being like that methodical SMG that could counter that.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, I like that. I mean, I'd give it a go. You got Sib on the bench of FaZe as well. What does Sib tend to use? Like, he's
a Krieg. Yeah, he's okay. More. He's like an aggressive Krieg, kind of like Awakening.
Funny, because I'm thinking like, I feel I'm a big fan of Slasher, so I'm like, if I'm building a bench team and I don't have Slasher and Huke, I feel like I'm doing a disservice. Yeah. But then I'm like, so I have Slasher, Huke. There's not too many other great SMGs on the bench. I mean, I'm looking at Mental, but people haven't really been talking about Mental. I don't know how good he actually is at COD. That's I mean, he's obviously good, but like, I don't know if he's probably ready. And there's not many other SMGs on the bench, because there's Dylan as well on London, technically still signed. I wonder how that would go. I'm just not sold on him these last couple of seasons.
I think you got to pick one of Huke, Sib, and Dylan, because they kind of all are like super aggressive. So I would only have like one super aggressive person, and then have the other guy. So like, if you had to choose between the three, obviously like Huke right now, it'd be kind of silly not to.
I think I'd just go Zed, Huke, and then like chuck Sib on the flex, and then just slash a main AR. Boom. Hyper aggro team. If Sib needs to run a sub, he can.
Yeah.
I mean, I give that a go.
I don't hate that.
Diamond Con's an option, accuracy's an option.
If you had to go with players who are in the amateur system right now too, what would you change?
Oh, that's a good question, right? I mean, that's a great segue into the next into our next point, really. Like the second part of IU Turtle's question regarding if there was expansion next year, how do you build your roster? Or even if there is an expansion, right? Let's say you're just a Seattle, you're ditching your whole team. like, where do you begin? Do you begin with getting some of these players off the bench, or do you begin with looking through the amateur scene? We kind of discussed how that might look earlier. Let me get up some of these stats, Austin, so I can see some of these players in the am scene.
I'll link you right now.
I would get Pred if I could. That's a fact. I'd love to get Pred. I'd love to get Nasty. Like those would be two that, like, I feel like a lot of these teams still don't appreciate the amount of talent that exists outside the US. So if I was a GM, I'd be trying to snap some of those guys up quick, because a lot of the North American guys have been snagged.
Honestly, if I had to build a roster tomorrow and there couldn't be anyone signed to a CDL team, the first person I'm picking up is Nasty. That man has been extremely consistent in the amateur scene. He had a 1.28 so far in Stage 4 Elite. And honestly, I don't remember the last time I've seen him below a 1.2 in the amateur side. So he would be the first pick. Yeah, first pick, 100% if I'm building a team next year for someone not on a CDL contract. And then there's honestly so much talent within the NA scene still, where honestly, if I'm like building a team, honestly, like taking some of the parts of Easter, like I think Gravity and John would like Nasty, and then you kind of find like your flex player would honestly not be a bad like core three. Because I think Nasty would be able to fit in like tomorrow to one of these teams and improve a lot of them. So having John, who I think actually has had a resurgence this year, even on a bad stage, both him and Gravity had a 1.04, and I think the team went 1-6. So clearly they are two talented, very talented players. So having them, Nasty, and then finding a fourth, honestly, if I could, I would trade for Awakening, or try to get one of the, because I would try to get one of the star flexes within the league, whether it's Awakening, whether honestly you put Skies there, or whether you get someone like even DiamondCon didn't do that bad. He was pretty good during the XM4 meta, but doing that would be my route I would go.
No, I agree. Absolutely 100%. I think this is what you've got to do. If you're a new team, or like, this is what I don't really understand about some of these team decisions the last couple of seasons. And I guess a lot of it is down to, I don't want to necessarily say incompetence, but like some people who don't necessarily know 100% what they're doing building teams. I think that this is the thing. So many of the guys in the amateur scene, they're the hungriest guys out there, right? And John certainly falls into that boat, I imagine, having had a couple of years off, and now he's back trying to get back onto a top team. And if you're a new wall coming in and you give him the opportunity, like, I'm sure he's going to snap that up, especially if you build around him with some great talent. I mean, we've seen what this talent has done that have been top in the standings, and pun intended for standy, I suppose, in the amateur side this season. Comes into the Pro League, and what's he doing, right? He's putting up Abesia level numbers on Minnesota Rocker. So this is just, I think it's 100% the way to go. But yeah, really good episode, I think, Austin. I think it's probably about time we leave it there. There's there's still so many topics like this that we can dive into. Certainly, if you guys would like to leave your own comments, questions, thoughts in the comment section below, feel free to do that. But also, you can join our Discord. It's it pops off sometimes when the majors are on, most certainly. And there's a little channel in there called Podcast Questions. You can leave all your thoughts in there. So yeah, final thoughts on the episode, Austin. Of course, you're going in. If you do 3-0 Minnesota Rocker, going to be an interesting series. I didn't realize you guys hadn't played them so far. If you do 3-0, you'll match Ultra's record. But of course, hopefully it's going to at least be competitive.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I love Preston and Mike. So,
sure,
honestly,
yeah, wow,
yeah. There's a lot of. It's going to be a great matchup. Honestly, I was so excited when Mike made it back on the roster. So I'm just excited to watch them play, because honestly, like, Minnesota's, even though they're consistently middle of the pack, it just seems like they're always constantly a threat. It seems like they're like always on like the cusp of being great. So honestly, I'm just excited to watch a great Call of Duty match, because I know that one will not disappoint. And honestly, we just have so many good matches this week. It's going to be a great week heading into LAN after too. So just really, really excited, honestly, for this week. Probably the most excited I've been since the beginning of the year.
Oh yeah, well absolutely. It's exciting stuff. The CDL just did a teaser about the land that's coming back. Only 9 days as of when this podcast is going live. The land does begin. This is beautiful stuff. Yeah, well, very much exciting things around the corner. Thanks all for watching and for tuning in. Leave us a like on the YouTube video if you guys made it all the way to the end. Rating on the audio platforms, all the type of good stuff. We will certainly be seeing you next week. Thanks for watching as always. Take care of yourselves, and we will see you next time.